So welcome back to the channel. My name is Joshua. This is Knox Studios. I have a unique guest on the channel today. A really good friend of mine named Jenali. She's from Burley, Idaho, where I was living in that area for about 2 years back in 2019 and 2020. And she's one of the most unique gems of Idaho, right? The gem state where I really first started delving in on a personal basis to crystals. But of course, there's such a deeper knowledge to Jenalis. So in this interview today, I just wanted to introduce you to her for who she is, her personality, and a pretty decent amount of just details on what she does for other human beings in her region. And hopefully, with this interview and other things, we can get her, her knowledge to a bigger audience. So I do believe that she has a lot to offer the
Okay.
universe. Here we are. All right, welcome back, everybody. This is going to be the third interview I'm going to be able to do, and I invited my good friend Jenna Lee here. So welcome, Jenna Lee.
Hello.
Yeah, so I know Jenna Lee as a good friend from my time in her little neck of the woods for about 2 years. I lived
Right.
there, and I got to know her obviously from her crystal shop. You can see it behind her. She's got all kinds of assorted things. We want to get into a lot of things here, but I also want to introduce
Yeah.
her properly. So, what I have is that we're talking to a spiritual hypnotherapist who specializes in emotional detox, hypnosis, and
Yeah.
past life regressions. So, for those that are interested or recognize this maybe in the title that don't know me or beyond, this is a good friend of mine first and foremost, but secondly, I mostly wanted to have her on this way because she has such a unique skill set that we can get so much deeper into. I want to kind of delve into all these depths of what Jenna Lee is, right? So,
There's
uh,
a lot. That's a lot.
yeah. So to start though, I really want to get into this past life regressions, right? So obviously when we talked last week, it's kind of like there's a teacher element now, but there was also a student mentality for a lot of time. So kind of like what was your path from the student of hypnotherapist to the teacher now? And what might be the
Oh, okay.
big difference? So you have the floor. It's all you.
Yeah, so actually I had read a book by Sylvia Brown called Past Lives, Future Healing when I was a teenager. Excuse me. And that talks all about past lives and how we can heal from them and why we do it. And when I knew I wanted to do a past life regression, when I had the opportunity to finally do it, I actually went to Idaho Falls, which is 2 hours from where I live, and went to a lady that was trained by Sylvia Brown. That was in 2008. That was my first session. I was probably right around 25 years old the first time I read her book. I was like probably 19. So there was a 6 year gap in there. I had a great first past life regression. I got a really good understanding. That was the first time I'd ever been hypnotized, mind you. So I did not know what to expect. And I knew that I wanted to do that for a living. And it took me until I was um, 28, and then I actually had went down to San Jose, California, to Sylvia Brown's school, and that was my first interaction with a past life regression hypnosis school. And then I continued on to 7 other schools after that, and just learned everybody else's techniques and kind of just meshed it into my own way.
No, that's a beautiful thing. And I know you talked about Sylvia Brown like from early 15 all the way to 28 when you did that. So
Yeah,
that was like half of your life at the point of getting into school and like really following
right.
through with it. So also when we were talking, you were mentioning this spiritual, emotional, and physical, the experience of pain, like when you're
Yeah.
actually working with people. It's like I don't know if you can just highlight a couple interesting interactions or some of the most you know
Yeah, yeah,
get
I've
into
got a lot. I've got a lot.
any on
I
that
get
front.
so pumped up talking about this because so there's several different ways that you can actually experience a past life regression. And you can experience it physically, like some people feel it in their physical body. You can experience it with emotions. You can experience it just like you're imagining stuff. Like I'm like, hey Josh, think about your first car. Think about the interior, how it looks, the driver, like the driving wheel, just think about how it's shaped on the outside, what color it is, and you're still seeing that in your mind, but yet your eyes are open, right? So that is what it's like when you're in hypnosis for most of us. So the imagination part, you're just seeing visualization. But some people have a very rare ability to get out of their body and relive it all over again as if it's happening right now. Some people do hear it like it's being told to them, and some people kind of just think it, but most people are able to visualize it even on a small scale. So there's some of those. Do you want me to share the stories of like how some of those have opened up? Is that what you want?
Yeah, to the best of your ability. I
Yeah.
mean, like
Oh no.
as a teacher, because there's quite unique, interesting moments,
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Yeah. So first of all, before I go into stories, what I do want to touch on is why we even do this to begin with,
Okay,
because
yeah,
that's really
absolutely.
important to understand before we get into the story time. But the reason that we want to do a past life regression is not just to go back and see who we were and what we were doing and what we were all about, but it really is to uncover a large portion of it is to uncover negative cell memory. And negative cell memory is like PTSD from a past life that is affecting us directly in this life. And once your subconscious mind and conscious mind can meet together about where this is coming from, you can heal almost anything in 6 months or less. Average that I've seen with my clients over the last decade is about 2 to 3 months time, but you can uncover fears and phobias, illness and sickness, bad relationship problems, addictions and chronic pain and things like that. And so that's usually kind of what people are looking for is I have this problem, where is it coming from? Let's uncover it. Another thing that people do like to do is find characteristics of the soul, who you were in several lifetimes before. What was your role or why did you choose to come here all those different times? And usually you can find the same characteristics in people around you and within yourself too. So if you feel like you're off balance, you don't know where you belong, it's a good idea to do a past life regression to see what you were and who you were in previous lives. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, yeah. And we discussed
Yeah.
it quite a bit last week too, in some detail. But basically, with those, like, there's not just one life. There's a couple different lives and different scenarios of them, and then there's that characteristic of the soul. I think you're defining is that's the recurrence, right? And so,
Yes.
in essence, it's kind of like comparative to their life experience now, but in different
Yes.
lifetimes in arenas and you know relationships.
Right. So a good example of that is um like a female in this lifetime. She was in a corporate position. She had a corporate job and she really liked the naturopathic way of life, but she was terrified to leave that corporate. So she did a past life regression and could see that in 3 lifetimes she was a healer, somebody who worked with the earth and the dirt and the plants
Yeah.
and the healing and just the earth in general. And she was considered a healer in every lifetime. The fear came because in every lifetime she was considered a witch and she was persecuted in every single lifetime. So once her mind knew, like once she knew that like I've been a healer in every lifetime, I've worked with the earth in every single lifetime, and I am being held back by my fear of persecution, I can now overcome that and then step away and do what her soul is meant to do. So that's what I mean by like a characteristic of the soul.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm certain that probably in the long run, now you see it to see like the fallout and like the welding of their life coming back into
I know.
unison, right? And it's got to be
That is one of
such a
the
gift.
best blessings. Yes, it is one of the best blessings. So if you're ready, I can tell you some stories about how people have
Uh,
opened up their past lives.
Absolutely. I'm beyond
Okay.
curious, and I'm sure everybody wants to hear some juicy
I'm so
details.
excited.
Yeah, go
Yes.
for
Now,
it.
this is definitely came over a decade of me doing this myself as a hypnotherapist. This has come from some of my teacher studies and some of my teacher stuff. So there's just a plethora of information. Um, so first of all, I said you could feel it. Some people feel it physically. I remember having a client come in here. She had very many things. She had headaches, neck aches back here, headaches here, her joints hurt in her wrists. She complained of like headaches. She sweated profusely, and she had a lot of thin hair. No matter what she did, she couldn't like get this hair to grow back. So when we go in, she says, I can't see anything. I can't visualize anything. And I'm like, okay, well, let's just keeping the senses open. And as she's keeping the senses open, she's telling me that her wrists hurt. And I'm like, okay, what else do you notice? And as she tells me about her wrist hurting and her neck starts to hurt back here, and I just kind of wait for the information to flow in, she started to notice that she was actually strung up, being held like this with her neck like this. Okay. And she's in a what she calls a dungeon. And when she's able to move her head around, she can see many other women chained to the wall and chained up. When I ask her, well, why are you here? Like, what's happened? How did you get here? She says that they have taken them because they believe that they're witches. Eventually, some men come and take her out of the dungeon outside into like a courtyard area where there's several different people from the town coming in. And they tell her that because she's older than the rest of them, they're going to take pity on her and they're going to kill her rather than torture her. So she experiences that. They chop off her head. They proceed to light her on fire. And when her spirit disassociated from the body, she did not cross over. She stayed and watched the whole thing. And so she brought back with her the pain here, the pain here, the sweating profusely, the hair kind of gone stuff. Um, and actually, it was able to clear up in less than 3 months for her. The pain went away almost immediately. Within the next week, she didn't have the pain anymore. Her hair started growing in thicker. Within, I believe it was 2 months. Now, keep in mind that was 8 years ago. So just really cool. The neck pain went away, just all the fun stuff. But she did say she realized that's why she hated to be called a witch in this lifetime, was because of that.
Interesting. Yeah. So like it's almost
Yeah.
like a realignment, even. Like this past life is like a. Do you believe it's maybe karmic of any nature? Do you feel like, or is it just like that is what, from your opinion as the therapist, like, do you believe that we need to align all times to the past life experiences to a certain degree, or is there certain ones where
Eh.
you might want to like, okay, well that might be a little too much, or I don't know how that might.
I do like the idea of being able to see who you are from the characteristics of your soul and what's happened to you to heal it to be more in alignment in this lifetime. I don't believe it's always necessary. Um, but if there's some extra healing that you're looking for and extra soul development, heck yeah, I say go for it.
Okay, absolutely.
So I have another cool one for you.
Okay, let's hear it.
It's very rare that this happens. I've only seen this a few times in my career. Um, but when you're putting somebody under, I think I've only, you know what, less than 5 times in my career in a decade, I've seen it where they've gone straight into the death. And the guy was just like, and I was like, oh, what's going on with you? And we call that an abreaction because he's really reacting almost like a panic attack underneath. And what's going on with you? Just remember you're the observer's position. You do not have to experience this. Just you're observing what's happening. And he's like, just doing this thing. I can't breathe. I can't breathe. What's happening? And he was being buried alive. They were
Ooh,
burying him alive. And in this lifetime, he came back in with asthma. His asthma cleared up in less than a month. In
in-
less than a month.
interesting.
I know. Isn't that so cool? So again, that's another physical thing. Emotionally, okay. Emotionally. So I had this lady, she came in from Idaho Falls. She couldn't visualize anything. She was upset and crying. That's the only emotion that could come out was being, crying and crying and crying. Um, when I asked her what happened, she just said, well, I don't know. So I just let her feel it for a moment because that's how they're opening it up.
Right.
And when the scene started to settle and the information started to come in, she could see herself in like a large ball gown. She was in the south. There were beautiful trees with like the hanging moss all around. They were kind of like in a plantation style house or house, and they were having a large ball of some type. And her fiance that she was engaged to ended up like choosing another woman in front of the whole town that was there, and it like devastated her. So she ran out to the river in her big old ball gown and cried and cried and cried and cried and jumped in the river and killed herself. Like she drowned herself. So in this lifetime, the reason that she had come in is because she had just gone through a breakup with her partner after they had been together for a longer period of time and instantly felt like death. She said people look like death is what she said. She had no color. She just had like saggy skin. She said that she had thought about suicide a few times. And ironically, like, or there's no such thing as that, but in every lifetime that we uncovered that particular day, she had been with that partner, they had broke up, and she had died. And so it was like a trigger. They just broke up with me and I need to go die now. And
Wow.
so it opened up emotionally.
Yeah, that's
You
quite different.
usually will, it is different, but it does uncover characteristics of the soul, right? Those
Mm-hmm.
two come together frequently. Triggers, the same type of like death, I guess, almost over and over and over. So they definitely have some learning to do still and growing in their soul, especially when they come back together. But that it was interesting.
But obviously, like I was saying, so we're like from the chakra standpoint, you may not fully, integrate a lot of your common like sharing and knowledge or from the elemental standpoint, but with your chiropractic background and your holistic health aspects, just kind of wanted to get a little bit deeper knowledge on where that fits in your specializations, right? So,
Yes, okay, but I'm not
you're
understanding quite yet.
you're actually actively doing chiropractic health as well right now.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Yes. Yep. That's what I see a lot of my clients for is to align people's bodies back into place.
right. So like, how much is it that, and then like segueing into anything else that you also do, I guess.
Like what percentage of that do I do? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I do. So the natural chiropractic thing, I actually can do 5 to 8 clients a day for days straight, weeks straight. So it is a large portion of what I do.
Okay.
And it's really interesting to find that as I've been able to see since I was 3 years old, see spirit, see energy, all the things. And now when I have clients for it, I have to really, do you guys want to hear information or do you not? Because what I'm finding is I'm a spiritual hypnotherapist because I don't just work with the mind, the habits, the beliefs. I work with the body, the spirit, the mind, and the soul together. And the more that I've just been practicing that for the last 10 years, I can't even go work on somebody else's back and fix their shoulders and fix their necks and fix their pinched nerves and their hips without spirits coming in.
Yeah.
It's so interesting that, there's always a physical thing that goes with an energetic or an emotional thing. So we do need to frequently bring everything back in, not just one portion of who we are, but every aspect of who we are back into alignment. And it naturally happens when I'm working on bodies.
Yeah.
So people are actually getting readings as well as past life readings because their bodies can contort because of past lives and, you know, um, getting physical treatment as well.
Yeah, and the reason like I think it's important because even though you may not see it from like the standpoint like I don't want to push chakra energy type of things on people because there's such a perception of it being an Eastern philosophy or whatever else. But no matter what
Okay.
modality I come across, is that body, mind, spirit, right? The three, like it's a trinity, just the same as anything else. And so that aspect of connectivity between like the upper spine, which is to the brain, all the way down to the physical, and everything kind of in between that emotional body, really is what it all comes down
Right.
to. I found a definition which is about spirituality, and any deficiency in a spiritual outcome really gets broken down this way. And I found it quite interesting. It's when the emotional energy, in combination with the thoughts, create specific beliefs. So it's when those, if I'm making all my decisions in my life based on emotions and traumas from like young ages, it doesn't necessarily mean I'm always 100% aligning with who I was intended to be, but there is
Right.
like, there's a reason for everything that happens in the universe. And so that current, going through life, that's the value. And so a spiritual, disalignment or I don't know how to even put that. Like when we find ourselves spiritually disconnected from
Yes.
what's actually happening in life, I had to really look at that pretty hardcore. Like, where was my beliefs about why I'm making the decisions and why I believe the things that I believe today? And which ones are actually helping me and which ones are not helping me? So obviously, like, you have a lot more intimate practice working with people one-on-one and kind of getting to this point of practicing and seeing that first and
Right.
foremost, like right in front of your eyes almost. So as far as a believing in your own modality, is there any way, shape, or form that you could ever not believe, basically, in what you're doing right now?
Um, there was a time that I honestly wasn't too sure about the past life regressions for a minute. I
Okay.
actually did have to take a small break from it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I really think that that was because became a fad for a short period of time. And so people were going to other psychics and mediums and saying like, oh, I want to know my past lives.
Yeah.
And as they were being told their past lives, they'd come in and I couldn't tell if they were just running with it in their brain without having a clean sheet, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was probably the only time that I had ever questioned, are they just making this up? Do you know what I mean? Or is it
Yeah.
real? But I will tell you that over time, the healing is undeniable. The things that they can heal from, the things that they've struggled from for so long, years, decades. I mean, and then in a short period of time, they are healing. Their pain's gone. This lady said she's been in therapy every month since she was like 15 and she was 40 something now. One past life regression helped her to understand her connection with her mom and she was done with therapy. Like that's undeniable.
Yeah.
So um I wholeheartedly believe in it, wholeheartedly with the miracles that I've seen.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't really ever question it anymore. But there was a period of time that I did.
Yeah, I think there's always got to be a time for us to doubt a little bit, like have this
Right.
moment of skepticism, I suppose, to like really ingrain if like I'm capable of doing this. And I've gone through this in multiple facets of my own practices. I just
Right.
opened myself up to tarot card reading personally for the last time. I would get my tarot readings like every year for a period, like on Earth Day, every single year. And then I gradually like earned a badge of like, you know what, I'm gonna kind of break some rules. And I was told this by my friend Tara, who did an interview as well with me,
Okay.
that buying your own tarot deck is against the rules and different things like that. So I did break those rules, but I have been utilizing it as a journal entry. And when I opened myself up to it, I couldn't really believe it, I don't think, unless I was able to journal and see like the actual path of seeing it. And now when I'm listening to tarot readers, still for me, and I have been leaning in on that quite a bit from a listening aspect again, it is so much more impactful because I took a little bit more time to really delve into questioning it
Yeah.
on a personal level, and
And
reading more
understand
about it.
it.
Because then when I'm
Yep.
listening to it and I'm seeing the cards read and I'm seeing like the timeline of what's happening in my life relative to their readings, it is a lot more interesting to me. So I think in all modalities, the reason I even bring it up is obviously that's a deep, very unique role of being a hypnotherapist and working in past life regressions. I don't know that I've come
Right.
across too many like in my own lifetime, and I've lived a lot of places and come across a lot of different people. So I just applaud you for what you do for
Thank
people
you.
and like that energy that you do, bring to the universe because of your own concrete spiritual connection as an individual yourself.
Thank you.
So, is there anything else that you'd like to touch on specific, like that just is it at the heart regarding your experience as a therapist that you want to add from that?
Um, really, there's nothing much more to say is I enjoy my job. I enjoy watching people. I enjoy watching people come in with these questions or just this need to explore who they are and just watching what comes out of it. I do want to tell you one amazing story though. I
Okay.
do.
Okay.
Okay, I do.
Absolutely.
Okay. So I have been a spiritual hypnotherapist for 10 years. That's what I set out to do. However, in 2021, I believe, I actually put my first course together. So I now teach others how to become a spiritual hypnotherapist as well. And when I had my first group of students, one reason that we would choose to do a past life regression is to gather any soul fragments that are out there. In case you do not know or are unaware, when we have a lot of trauma, our soul can break off and be left in these little parts. Okay. And so soul retrieval, gathering up the soul fragments. But anyways, my one student was working on another student. And now I'm going to tell you that the lady who was hypnotized is a medium. She's a medium here in my shop.
Okay.
She is one of the people that goes in so incredibly deep because there's 3 levels of hypnosis and it's rare for people to hit that last level. And she does it within seconds. When she's under, she doesn't remember anything. So keep in mind, we did this whole past life regression with her. And when she wakes up, she knows nothing about what she just said. Okay.
Right.
So the first 2 past lives that she does, because we usually go to 3 with me, is there's a little bit of stuff there, but nothing too much. This third one comes in and she is a female. She's on a farm. She's out with the horses, out standing outside of their corral, their horse pen. She's so excited because in 2 days' time, she's going to get married to the love of her life.
Okay.
As the story progresses, she's in the church now. Her whole family's there. She gets married. She's super excited to be with this guy. She recognizes his soul as being the husband that she got married to in this lifetime. They're divorced in this lifetime, but they were partners in both lifetimes. She gets out of the church and they're done getting married, and the story moves forward and they have a child. And the story moves forward, and now they are at a gravesite and they are burying a child. The second child didn't live too long, less than a year, and it was a little boy. And as it continues, the relationship between the husband and wife becomes very strained. Anybody who's ever lost a child, that it typically, happens. The husband's not coming home very often, and she's left with the daughter at her house quite a bit. And then she all of a sudden says that the husband comes in and takes the little girl from her, and they take off and never leave again, or they never come back again. And I was like, okay, that's interesting, because it was a quick switch in my brain of like, he's never coming home, and now he takes the daughter and takes off. And I'm just trying to dig a little bit and get some information. But as it kind of continues, I'm like, well, what have you done this whole time while your husband hasn't been here? And she's like, I don't know. I said, well, have you been taking care of yourself? I don't know. I said, okay, well, what have you been doing? Sitting in my chair. I'm like, okay. And I'm trying to like dig a little deeper. And I'm like, she's talking to me about her daughter, not seeing her daughter since she was a small age. And I said, well, how old would your daughter be now? She said like 21, 22. She was trying to recall that. And I said, when's the last time you seen her? Maybe when she was like 8. Okay, so what have you been doing the whole time? Just sitting in my chair. And I was like, okay.
Wow.
Hey, can you see the light? And she's like, yeah, it's over there. And I said, can you go to the light? And she's like, you want me to leave my chair? And I said, yes, I want you to leave your chair. And the most incredible thing happened. And it just takes just a few seconds, and she goes, oh, my family, they didn't leave me. They've been waiting for me this whole time. They've been waiting for me. And the tears, and I'm like crying, and my student's crying, and my person's crying. And she can tell me each one of their names. She can tell me their last name. She can tell me which town they're in Wyoming, mind you. She can tell me the year. But just that excitement of like, they didn't leave me. They've been waiting for me. They've been waiting for me. And the coolest thing about this is we just watched a soul fragment cross back over to the other side to help her to become more whole. And I will never forget the amount of like intense, I mean, it was intense. The passion, the excitement.
Yeah.
Her spirit that had been staying there in Wyoming on a porch somewhere, okay,
Yeah.
in a chair, in a rocking
really
chair.
Comfortable chair.
She thought that they had left her, but what had happened is she'd actually gotten sick and passed away. And the last day that she remembers sitting in the chair, she did say that she was sitting in the chair and she watched her little girl play, but she was too tired to go play with her. And then the husband came and took the little girl and left and never came back. Okay.
Wow.
And that's why I was like, there's something more to the story. But we just crossed a soul fragment over. And so that allows her to be a little bit more whole in her spirit. That helps out with her abandonment issues, her rejection issues, her getting left behind issues, her not being loved issues. I mean, like so many things happened once we gathered that soul back. But I will never forget because I kept thinking, there's more to this story. And I was like, she's dead. I know she's dead. And I kept trying to get her to understand that she was dead. What have you been doing? I don't know. Have you been taking care of yourself? I don't know. What have you been doing? Sitting in the chair, and I was like, she's dead.
Yeah,
Like,
that almost
I just
makes
need
me.
her to see.
That just makes me think like in the whole time like you were like recalling like oh she wasn't moving like the chair thing. I was just thinking in my head about this quote that I came by not too long ago. It's Marcus Aurelius. It's a pretty simple concept, but from his era, obviously, that comfort is the greatest addiction.
Oh,
Like this,
yep.
the capacity to just kind of narrow our field of vision so much that like being grounded into that instead of being even willing anymore to go seek after things like that. That's what I was kind of feeling like when you're sharing about where
Yeah.
she was at, like unwillingness to
Comfort is
budge.
the biggest addiction. I do like that saying because we
Hmm.
can only grow through our discomfort. The most growing happens through our discomfort. Josh, you have to remember though, she wakes up from hypnosis. She
Yeah.
does not remember any of it. We're over here bawling and crying and sobbing. And she's like, what's wrong with you guys? What's wrong with you? If you don't know what I'm talking about, go check out my TikTok because I have her on there several times where she's just like, and she's out. She doesn't remember any of it. So
I
we're like,
okay.
Ricky, you just told us this thing. Like, you just told us this thing. And she's like, I don't know. And I was like, what do you remember? And I have to like almost do this like hypnosis part. Like, what do you remember? And then what's your husband's name? What's your name? And so anyways, we did go back into the archives and we started digging to find out who she really was in the archives back in Wyoming. It was really interesting, but super cool. So soul retrieval, if you feel tired and feel like you're not present all the time, you might have a soul out there that's just like floating around in a chair, I guess.
That sounds good. We've already covered so much. It's like obviously main I want to get into obviously is how I met you and your crystal shop there.
Okay.
What that looks like. Obviously, there's a lot behind that, but not just because you're in Idaho and Gem State. There's some geographic things that we wanted to talk about as well about your region and so forth if you wanted to, but just that path for you going from hypnotherapist to moving toward
Crystal shop
yeah
owner.
having a crystal shop
Yeah.
of your own to like really
So
lean in on that.
it really started when I was a little girl. Here close to me, we have what we call the City of Rocks. It's about 40 minutes from me. People come from all over the world because we have the most unique structures over here. They like to rock climb it and things like that. But I like to hike and I hike there very frequently, almost once a week in the summer. My family cabin's there, and we used to go climb the rocks and they were shiny. They had a lot of mica in it. Obviously, back then I did not know that was mica in it and, quartz. But so my grandma has a rock garden and she has a rock garden inside and outside, and we paint rocks and like just all about rocks. And as I'm hiking as a little kid all the time, I'm like stuffing rocks in my pocket. I like to collect them. And as I became a hypnotherapist, okay, well, before the hypnotherapy part, I was always kind of into like the metaphysical. I've always been able to see and I've always been different. So I like crystals. I'd hit up every crystal shop I could. Now I have my own office that I'm doing hypnosis, and I carry my own crystals in my pocket. My clients are leaving and I'm like, oh, they just need this, like I'm pulling rocks out of my pocket and giving it to them. And I was a server back then as well. So I would always put them in my pockets of my apron. And all of a sudden, I'm like, I'm going through a lot of crystals. I'm going through a lot of crystals. So I just got one bookshelf. That was it. Just enough with like little round bowls to have a few of them in. Not a big deal. And then all of a sudden, I was like, I kind of just want to go to a crystal show and see what they have to offer. And I said straight out, I do not want to be a crystal shop. I just want to see what they have and maybe offer a few more. Well, within like a few months, like I had more shelves and more shelves and more shelves, and it became this super exciting. I don't know, I don't want to call it an addiction because that's a negative thing, but it was just so exciting. And I had one shelf and then two shelves and then three shelves, and then I did not have a waiting room for my clients anymore. I had a crystal shop in my waiting room. And
Yeah.
this that I'm in right now, it used to be a treatment room, but I even expanded into here as well. And really, it just was like, um, it just was so natural for me. People are, kind of always like, I don't know how you remember all of them and what they do. And it's really interesting because 10 years ago, next month, I had a house fire and I lost my whole collection. I lost everything. And that's kind of what led me into like, I was working 2 and 3 jobs and trying to go to college at the time. And then I was just working 2 jobs and having a business. And then my house burns down. And I'm like, I'm quitting all my jobs and I'm going to school now. So that's exactly what led me to San Jose to finally live my dream and go to school. So, when that happened, I have a very poor memory when it comes to human things. I don't remember people's names. I will know that I should know your name, but I won't know what it is. Or I will know your name, but not know why I know your name. And I could have full conversations for 30 minutes and walk away and within a minute not recall anything we just said. Now, I've always said that was PTSD because that started happening right after the fire and we were inside of the fire. We woke up to it. But all of a sudden, I get 200, 300 different types of crystals in here. I can tell you what they're called, most of the time where they come from, and most of their metaphysical properties. And so it just was like supernatural for me. And when I went to become a natural chiropractor, I was able to pick up on that easily too. It's the human things I don't remember. So I often tease my customers and clients, I don't remember your name, so tell me a crystal's name instead, and I'll remember that's
Right.
your name. So really interesting that I just picked it up so naturally. The gift that was presented to me in 2020, because I had 4 new gifts come in 2020, was that I could stare at you and then like look at my crystals because I have 200 different types of tumbleds here in the shop and look at you, look at my crystals, and they would light up in my brain which ones needed to go home with you. I would just pick them up. You, People would say, what do they do? And I would tell them what they did. And they're like, that's exactly what I'm going through. So people would line up by the dozens to get a crystal reading because I didn't know what else to call it. Who else does that?
Right.
Like they just light up in my brain. So I became a crystal reader for a while, but that ability did disappear. I would say 9 months later, 10 months later. It was just here for a short period of time and left. And so that's kind of how I just transitioned into the crystal shop here in town. Yeah.
Nice. Well, I mean, you always had such a great setup there. And I remember walking in the first time too, and I was just like, this is what I'm working on, and this is what I'm looking for. And you just started like grabbing things like, feel this one in your hand. This one feels great to me. Like, and I was just like, actually, the first one that I ever bought from you, and I didn't just buy that one because I had a rose quartz and this one. I need to get your feedback. It's like a dragon egg, and it has some citrine yellow in it, and it's like with the granite like
Oh, I
infusion.
know.
So yeah, you know what I'm
Yep.
talking about already, but I forgot the name.
Septarian.
I forgot the
It's
name.
septarian.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
septarian. And if it's in that egg-shaped style, we call it septarian dragon egg.
Yep.
Um, I'm like, I have them right behind me. So
Perfect.
yours might have more yellow in it,
Yeah,
but
it does. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
so
So yeah, it's like absolutely beautiful, and it just fits so ergonomically well in my hand. And I mean,
yeah, I love
I
them.
remember so much of my experience going to your shop for the first time and like really growing my own, like, supply. Not to like your degree, obviously, but you were also talking about going to Arizona. Did you end up going to that biggest gem show in Tucson?
Yeah, yep. So
Yeah.
I do. I love that place down there. I've met the most incredible people and seen the most amazing things down there.
Yeah.
I do like to go there every year, and I do like to meet new people and of course get my supply because for me, since I can feel the crystals, I like to buy and pick with my hands so I can feel the energy. Um, and usually that's why I like to go to shows so I can just feel them, see
Yeah.
them, talk to them,
Yeah.
pet them, whatever.
Like I told you, I recently went to my own gem show and almost fully doubled down. Not quite, but I got some more like raw raw rocks, like a big old piece
Material.
of fluorite. And it's only $25, as opposed to like the full polish and everything else. But just things to like add to the full spectrum of what it is. And I'll send you a picture more of like my pretty decent collection now. Because like when I do the tarot readings, I have a little box, so I keep all the small stuff in there with its healing properties. Now when I do my smudging, I actually have an eagle's feather with the selenite stick, and then just a decent more amount of raw, which has been actually more impactful recently because a lot of those things came by way of gifts too.
Yeah.
Where like someone just dug up and they're like, I know you love crystals, and I'm like, well, it's still new to me too compared to some other people, but when they send them to me as a gift, it's like so different than a lot of the other things. And like you're saying, when you go to a show, there's just so much more experience of seeing there with the owners, like the background history, and then probably for you more than anybody, but not within me, than like that physical in my hand. So
Yeah.
I think that's interesting.
Do you know what is interesting is when you get into this, just as a word of caution, most of us actually have an allergic reaction to one of them.
Okay.
And so when you start collecting and getting around them, if things get wonky or something, you might have an allergic reaction to them like most of us do.
Do you think that it's
Yep.
possible to have too much crystals in one room? Like, I don't know if you lean in on that or not, but I have been told that.
I do. Yes, it's possible because if you are super sensitive, you got to think that each one of these crystals, I mean, look behind me. This is just my purple section. Okay.
Yeah.
So all the ones that are purple are behind me. Um, each one of these crystals is like a radio blasting a radio station, depending on what frequency they are, right? So we've got like, these are my radio stations. So like 99.9, 106.1, 106.7, 104.1, 92.5, and they're all blasting their own frequency, their own radio station. Is that going to get annoying after a while, or, a lot of like intensity? Yeah, it is. So if you're going to have a lot of crystals, the number one thing to do is to know how to balance the frequencies. How do we get the crystals to work in harmony for us rather than going against us? And this is another reason of like you're going to choose to use a crystal grid to make sure that you're taking care of that grid, because if any time they start to get jumbled up and messed up, you've just messed with the feng shui or the energy of them, and they can harm. So I don't mean it like as in harm, but chaotic is the word.
Yeah.
I
Can
had
be
a girl who
disruptive.
had like, yes, of course, because they're all frequencies. And if you are sensitive to frequencies yourself, is all that frequency blasting at you gonna do something? Yes. So yes, contain the energy, or at least get them to work in harmony together. The best way to do that is real selenite. Real selenite. Now, the kind of I'm assuming the kind that you have in your smudger is probably not selenite. People label it as selenite, but it's actually satin spar. But real selenite will calm. So other crystal shops have huge, ginormous like selenite slabs up on their walls to contain and to bring it into symphony. Um, salt, salt will work. My favorite though is music, is like singing bowls and the hang drums and Native American music of drumming and flutes and anything high vibrational, because again, that's a frequency and they all can kind of start matching that frequency. So those are my favorite ways to kind of balance things out. And I treat my crystals like I do when I was a little girl with my stuffed animals. I meet them together. Hey guys, this is another one. Welcome into the family. I talk to my crystals. If you ever come in here, you probably will see me talk to my crystals as I'm wrapping them up. I tell them I'm going to miss them. I hope they have a good home. Like I really am communication, because they really do have such an energy about them. But yeah.
Yeah, I think that's great advice because I also haven't heard of the salt thing yet, but and you
Okay.
might be right. I'll get your opinion on that selenite stick, but you could probably tell by looking at it. I don't know.
Oh, 100%. I'll show you what real selenite looks like. I've got three styles in here,
Okay.
and then satin spar, but people all say it's selenite.
Yeah.
In fact, I go dig my own selenite by hand halfway in between me and you. And I was just trying to come up with a day that I could do that where it's not too cold and not too hot. But I go dig for selenite by myself in 5-gallon buckets, and it's halfway in between me and you.
Okay. Nice. Well, I'm looking forward to getting up there myself, like we talked about, because you've got an event coming up here soon too, right?
Yep, May 18th and 19th. Uh-huh.
Yeah. So maybe we can do it around that time, and then go for that hike to those. What was the name of this? But the City of Rocks.
Ooh, yeah. Yeah, if you want to come on a weekend. Anyways, we'll talk about that offline.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, if you want to come.
Yeah.
Yes, that's my favorite.
Well, I mean, I'm like I said, I'm not too far away again, but the psychic energy and like the intuition we were also talking about, and I want to get into like that gut
Okay.
versus the third eye. I know I see it like solar plexus and third eye, and the unique thing, real quick, about that from my standpoint and chakra energy is that there's a correlation of those frequencies we're talking about right now. This correlation of
Hmm.
numerology. So the solar plexus is actually supposedly at a 528 hertz. So that would be the actual like frequency that you could look up on internet or whatever and listen to. And that's like your gut belly that we were talking, everything that we get into, that intuition of the physical. And then
Okay.
what's interesting is the third eye is 852. And so like those numerologies, they balance each other and they're both intuition. It's like the connection with the physical body at the lower frequency, and then higher frequency is more with spirit frequency. So this would be like
Hmm.
divine intervention, if you will, like true knowledge or understanding of something, that pineal gland kind of getting tickled on its sensory. So then when that sends a sensation all the way into the physical body, right? We wanted to find out what your thoughts are regarding that, as your psychic capacity has like increased over time, if there's ever been any like specific moments or sensitive moments, and how that might ebb and flow in your practice as well.
Yeah, so where I've been studying natural medicine for 10 years, and I've been a weirdo my whole life. Okay. I have found it very interesting. I've worked with a lot of mediums in my lifetime as well, and some mediums believe that what you put into your body is going to affect your readings and your connection to source. And I really was like, is that true for me? Like, I want to see how I okay, so for some people, it really is true. The belly, right here where our solar plexus is, where all of our digestive organs are, they actually say that this is the first mind. And if you don't know, your neurotransmitters, your happy stuff for your brain is actually created in your belly. There's a direct correlation physically between the belly and the brain. So if you're clogged up down here, you can't think up here. You have brain fog and you forget and sleepiness and all that stuff. So really physically, that's what happens. Same thing spiritually is if you're clogged up here, you're not going to have good perception up here. Now, some people are extra sensitive, like myself, and so it doesn't really matter too much what I eat, but for a lot of other people, it does. When the belly is clear, when the gut is clear, when the solar plexus is clear, this is the first mind. This is where we receive information. When I'm coming next to you and I feel you, and I feel your energy, whether I'm like, oh, I like that, or I'm like, oh, get out of my bubble. That's coming from the solar plexus area. Okay. And you can't read people properly if this is not clear. So once this is clear, then this is our first mind. Then the heart is the second mind because we can feel and we can feel those emotions and we can feel those frequencies and we can feel. And once this is clear and this is clear, then the third mind, the actual brain, is clear, and that's that direct correlation from spirit down in to center. So for a lot of people, it does matter how the belly is energetically as well as physically as well. Um, some of us are really sensitive that it doesn't matter what I eat. I've messed around with this for 3 years now. And really, whatever I eat, I still can connect pretty easily. I've even tested this for myself on things like alcohol every once in a while. And if I was like sipping wine or something with friends, I actually am more open because I'm not worried about my human filter of being wrong or worried about like how they're going to perceive it. It actually kind of takes that filter away from me too. So really interesting with plant medicine and stuff, what I see.
Yeah,
So for most people, it does matter what's going on in here. This is a direct correlation.
absolutely. See, for me, like I've had to really dial back on my diet, and it's been the main stage of like all this more personal development for myself over the last 2 years.
Yeah.
As I was suffering from, I don't know if it's body dysmorphia, but like I was such a chronic smoker for so many years that, even like today, like I have this habit of like keeping my hand close to my mouth, like I'll grabbing my
Oh, okay.
chin or just things like that. But I say that to say this. I couldn't get beyond 140, 150 pounds until I finally really started being a lot more focused on the choices that I made. Because when I first put down cigarettes and smoking, that alone didn't necessarily do anything. I just started gorging myself with food, and I didn't know how to portion control because I had been doing more like not by like what do they call it? It's a type of fasting. Basically, like I'm taking over.
Oh, intermittent.
Yeah, intermittent fasting, and it was like such a habit as a smoker because it was like a filler. There wasn't anything else in the middle. It was not uncommon for me to go like 20 hours without actually putting anything physical or substantial into my body.
Yeah.
And so out of nowhere, now I have nothing else to put in my mouth other than food. And it was like, okay. So a family portion size meal isn't going to sit. And it took a long time for me to get back to like portion control and like actually understanding what, what kind of like how many different things I need to put on a plate and so forth. It's been so important for me because I went from like 140 pounds up to 200 within about 5 months, and now I'm finally started regulating back.
Okay.
I'm like 180 finally again. But yeah,
that's interesting.
It's been such an interesting thing over the last 2 years because it happened so rapidly at first. The 6 months, I'm like, oh my god, I'm going obese out of nowhere. I've never like everybody thought I was a twig for like ever. And then all of a sudden, I was just like, I was petrified in a way.
Oh, I bet. Well, I got to tell you, if you do some deep breathing, some breath work before you eat, because we're expanding that solar plexus in our digestive, your digestion system works even better when you take in deep breaths before. And it doesn't have to be a whole breath work thing. It could just be 10 deep breaths. We're really just expanding the gut and the belly. It makes your digestive system work better.
Yeah.
So the other thing I want to touch on, because you were talking about, you call them hertz, 528 hertz. I call them solfeggios. There's 9 different solfeggios, right? And when you are sensitive to food and how it relates to your energy, and most people are, like I said, you can get into it even deeper with the energy of the food. Now, this is you can look at this. This is all over the internet. But canned food, usually the frequency of canned food, unless it's homemade, if it's store-bought, is usually at a frequency of a 0. And each fruit and each vegetable has a certain frequency that'll help bring the body up. Now, to my understanding, there's several different studies on this.
Yeah.
But if the body is below, like, 58 hertz, that's when you get sick and have illness. So the foods and the vegetables that you eat that keep your body's vibration up so that you're in correlation and happy and healthy, right? But depending on what chakra you want to work on, you can eat that food that matches that chakra. If I'm at the grocery store and I'm having a hard time because somebody's energy is bombarding me, I can either get something, well, I wear a lot of black anyways, and put it over my belly. If I want to clear my solar plexus, maybe I go grab bananas and put it here, or oranges, because sacral and solar is, together. But you can, if you're sensitive to food, match the food's energy to the solar plexus, or excuse me, the chakra that you're trying to heal or cleanse. And if you want to lift your vibration up.
Right, and trying to buy raw, that's way better than anything in a can, like anything.
Oh yeah, 100%. And if you go deeper into this, and I got really into this is something I teach in my 6-week course, is oils, the frequency of oils, and which one actually raises your vibration the most. So you can get into solfeggios, but frequencies are everything. Energy never lies. It knows no time, distance, or space. So if you get into frequency work, everything's got a frequency. Yeah. So eat the foods that match whatever chakra you're trying to heal.
Yeah, I'm still trying to work into, like, this is from my perspective, we're talking about prana, and so pranayama breathing techniques, that's what I've been really kind of working on myself. I've been doing daily exercises with yoga now, but I've always been incorporating yoga or breathing into my meditative practice. And
love that.
When it comes to this, frequencies of food, I'm not so familiar with like what lower frequencies there are, but I know the lowest solfeggio frequency is 174, and then it goes all the way up to 963. So yeah, the 9 number, the 369, 258, 174, like those correlations, the separations of three. There's so much in the frequency. That's like what I lean into the most here on the channel, or have been leaning into after last year, because it was the first time I really got introduced to solfeggio frequency meditation practice. So it was one of the most, eye-opening, not by opening my physical eyes, but I'm talking about my true third eye, like of understanding beyond what meditative practice was to me. It was finally this moment where I broke out of the perception, and it's a really bad practice. I don't recommend anybody do so when it comes to meditation. It's sitting in and thinking, oh, it's all just about posture, because there's always such just like okay, this is how we sit, little tiny Buddha type of situation. But yeah, it's finally where I broke out of that and like allowed this energy to go much further into my writing, into like working with others, listening capacity, and mostly it was last year I had my throat finally open. So I lost my voice for like 2 straight weeks. And it just came on like a flu and cold symptoms, and I haven't gotten sick in so many years, but out of nowhere, my voice just disappeared. And I couldn't share. And then all of a sudden, I had been the best employee at work, I'd never getting in any trouble, like all these things. And the second this happened, all of a sudden I'm just like, I'm going to stand up for myself. I'm going to say what I want to say. And there's so much like imbalance that happened in that process. So the fallout from I think it happened on July 4th. So I woke up July 5th and it was downhill. So what it comes down to for me, it was like working with these frequencies, everything in that solar plexus right now, prana. I'm finally getting back to this position this year too, where I'm going to be growing my garden and actually eating as much as possible from this garden. I don't know to what extent I can do this, but I'm going to do my best, because the first time I ever ran a garden was back in 2015 and 16. And it was when I really had my very first Kundalini opening experience, because I was eating raw. And the only things I ever bought from grocery stores were meat, And I tried to not do that.
It's so interesting, because if you don't know this, your plants, when you grow your own plants, because of the frequency connection, they grow to your energy. So they actually start to be grown with the nutrients that you're missing and the energy and the frequency that you're missing to provide you with more. So it's important to touch them, to talk to them. And again, there's frequencies out there that you can play for your plants that'll help them to grow even better. But there are rocks that do make your plants grow better as well. Like green moss agate is one of them, and it is said to make your your plants grow better. So there's a lot with frequency, because everything is a frequency.
Yeah.
And I actually have a frequency machine here that is programmed for 834 diseases that you can hook up to your body and then blast 20 frequencies in you at the same time. And so I've been working with frequencies and frequency healing probably since 8 years ago, I would say. I got a machine years and years and years ago for this. So I learned a lot about the frequencies and what they do for the body and the energy of the world.
I love that. Well, the focus, I think, with you above all is just coming into your own personal power. That's what I think you emit more than most people that I talk to. Is, more often than not anyway, when I've come into contact with you, you're just, who you are, what you're about, to a certain degree. So, as I was saying about that solar plexus area, this personal empowerment, not giving our power away. And I know recently I wanted to give you an opportunity to go over this transform supplement that you were talking to me about.
Yeah.
And just staying in that, because we are still talking about the digestion, the diet, things of that nature. So to what extreme you've been able to kind of come out of recently, if you wanted to share on that.
Okay. Yeah. So last year, 2023 and going into 2024 was one of the hardest years of my life. I knew that something was wrong with me, but I didn't know what was wrong with me. And of course I do this for a living, and this is the only job that I had. I fix backs, I do readings, I have the crystal shop, I teach classes, I do women's retreats, just like all of the things that you think of as a spiritual energetic healer. And last year it was just it's like my passion for life was gone. Everything just kind of seemed to fall apart. And people were asking me questions like, well, what's wrong with you? Last year you owned your power. This year just kind of floating around. And I was thinking, well, if I knew what was wrong with me, I would heal me. But the thing is like you really don't have a lot of people to talk to. At least I don't feel like I did, because I'm the person that they come to for healing. I'm the person that teaches. I'm the person. So where's my person? And unfortunately, most of the people like me that I would have gone to that are my friends were going through the same thing. And it started probably approximately 10 months before I caught it. So going into February of 2024, I caught myself doing behavior that I hadn't done since I was 19 with postpartum and married, um, which would have been 19 years ago. And when I caught myself doing that kind of behavior, I was like, oh, I'm depressed. And then it was to try to figure out, am I mentally depressed, spiritually depressed, energetically depressed, like, whatever, all the things, all the depression, where is it coming from? And obviously I would heal it if I knew exactly what it was, but I've been trying to figure it out for a year now and I couldn't figure it out. So a blessing had happened. I had a friend who had been trying to give me these supplements. Well, I know natural herbs. I know frequency healing. I know all these things. So I wasn't really like taking it seriously. I was like, okay, whatever. And this pill was called Transform. And she gave me a few more and a few more. And then eventually she met me at Costco in Twin Falls, 40 minutes from my house, and gave me a supplement. I just drank one. That's what I was drinking the whole time I was talking to you, called Mojo. And I was taking this Mojo every day on a regular basis, and I started to feel better. Now, mind you, with my depression, I was like getting up and taking kids to school and coming home and sleeping on the couch until I had to be here. And then sometimes I wouldn't even come to work. I just put a note on the door. I was showing up 2 hours late, and that's no way to live life, let alone run a business. So everything is going down, and the economy is like this, and businesses like this, and it's just so much depression. Um, so I take these supplements every day for a week, and I start to have consistent good days. I'm not sleeping anymore all day long. I'm up, I'm energetic. My depression is lifted. Now, if you've ever had depression, you might have a good day every few weeks and you're like, oh, it's a good day today. Like maybe things are changing, and then boom, right back down. So when I had consistent days of happiness and hustling, as I call it, every day for a week straight, I was like, I think this is working. And of course, I'm a skeptic. So I keep taking them. And oh my gosh, by 2 weeks, like I have not slept. I mean, like slept when I was supposed to, but I slept during the day. I'm energetic. My depression's lifted. I'm at work. I'm cleaning, something that I don't naturally like just think about doing, like, all the time. So I'm organizing things. It's kind of like my ADHD too, is like kind of gone away or whatever. And really interesting that these are all plant-based supplements, so high vibrational, and it had serotonin in it. The pill that she had given me before, my friend, I started taking that as well, and that's called Transform. I am hyperglycemic. I have studied with natural doctors all over the world, and my natural doctor told me to stop eating fruit. And I said, stop eating
Wow.
fruit. Like that's one of my favorite things ever. It is my belief that if God and the earth have created it, I can consume it. And if I cannot consume it, I'm out of alignment somewhere. So what do I need to do to come back into alignment? So I had studied herbs of how to overcome my blood sugar imbalance, my hyperglycemia, as the white coat doctors would call pre-diabetic. And I found the number one herb that worked for me is Gemina sylvestre. And I was making those pills by hand for 8 years. The other one I found, I can never pronounce this. You can find it with the doTERRA oils or any essential oils as well. Marjoram.
Yeah.
Marjoram. Sounds like like butter or whatever, and I would just put that in my water, but that would balance my blood sugar out. The interesting thing about this pill that she gave me that's plant-based, natural, called Transform, is that they learn to separate the glucose molecules and transform glucose into fiber. So 50 to 90% of what we are consuming, especially when it comes to glucose and sugar, is being turned into fuel for our bodies instead. And when that happened, there's no more inflammation in the mind, in the brain. in the joints and in the belly. And when there's no inflammation for the body to fight off, you're able to think clear, have more energy, and
Yeah.
process things better, get rid of the junk in here, right?
Yeah.
We're getting rid of the junk in here. And as I started to take those two things and feel better energetically, I have always been on enzymes. For 10 years. I've been on enzymes, and I got on these enzymes here. What I love about enzymes is because it is naturally like cleansing the belly, breaking down the food so you can absorb it, and flushing out what no longer needs to be there. Because the solar plexus is clear, the heart is clear, and the mind is clear, it is a direct correlation to connection to the other side.
Yeah.
And I was taught by my natural doctor 10 years ago that if I cannot connect, like if I'm reading you, Josh, if I'm reading you, but we're not connecting energetically, you take an enzyme and I take an enzyme, or half and half of the pill, and I can connect to you energetically. So when I'm teaching muscle testing, if they aren't getting it very well, I give them an enzyme. And so when I've been on these enzymes, ever since I've been on these enzymes and this stuff, my depression's lifted, and I'm directly like in constant communication to source now all the time. I can't even go to the grocery store without seeing spirits around people right now because I'm like so clear in my body with these supplements.
Yeah, it
It's just
makes
kind of, it's
sense.
just kind of interesting. Yeah,
Makes sense. And
it is so fun.
even with that last comment you were making too, it makes me remember and think, I don't know how many families do so anymore, but obviously I live alone. But if we're not eating as a family together and like that same home cooked meals, like how much more our energy can come into unison or union with
Yeah.
each other when we stop eating together, stop having the same meal together anymore, how much we were kind of getting separated from each other, even with our own households possibly. But I think that is fascinating as I've kind of seen you transform back into the Jenali of old to a degree. Like all of a sudden, it wasn't just wanting to have a conversation again. It was hard to get a hold of you again.
Yeah.
Like that's that
Well, and
transformation.
originally it was probably hard to get a hold of me this last year because I wasn't talking to anybody because of the
Yeah,
depression, but coming back out of it. But the
yeah,
whole meal thing is really interesting that you bring that up too, because for a long time I didn't understand why we prayed over food or why we talked to our food before we eat it.
yeah.
So giving it that frequency and that good vibration, and when you're together as a family, laughing and sharing memories and making memories, your food is filled with the frequencies of that healing. And it's really
Absolutely.
interesting that you brought that up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just, I don't, it's been a long time since I have a regular meal with other people. But when I do, it's so much more different than ever before. You take it for granted as a kid, I suppose, Your mom's forcing you, hey, it's dinner time. No, I'm playing. I've got video game. I got
Right.
friends in my ear. All this other stuff going on these days. But yeah, like if I'm really hearing what you're saying when it comes to vibrating together and having the same frequency, do our meals together and pray over it. Yeah, bring it into a higher frequency. I think that's just such a beautiful message as well when it comes to that solar plexus and that energy. And then when you were talking about before too, just to segue a little bit backward, about how you can connect a lot more to crystals and things that are kind of like in that physical form pressed over time into what they are versus the human aspect of like it's very much flighty. If I define human interactions, a lot of time our communication with each other is flighty, maybe not as memorable as something that's been in the earth and ingrained there forever. But that's what's interesting to me too about your past life hypnosis thing, because you're going to the depths, you're going back to that real time and pressure of somebody's emotional energy of who they actually are represented in today. And so it's fascinating to me who you are just as a person, all of your energy that you bring to the table. And I just want to give you the floor again too to like conclude with whatever it is. I know you've got an event coming up, where you're at, any specific details before I ask you my final basic question.
Okay, so details about me. I'm in Burley, Idaho. I live in a small town of like 11,000 people. When I started my shop 10 years ago, I was considered the witch, right? So people were mad about it. Now I'm blessed to say that people are open to it and it's more mainstream now for healing. I do have an event. It is Southern Idaho's largest spiritual and holistic healing event. It's my ninth year doing it, and it is May 18th and 19th at the Burley Bass Western. I do have plant-based supplements and a crystal shop, and I love to make TikTok. So you can find me on TikTok talking about spiritual stuff and jamming out, and Facebook too. So,
Awesome.
yes.
Well, hopefully you can send me the link to then to your TikTok so I can include that in the description.
Okay.
But
That
I
one's just fun though, because I like to put people under. I have a very trick way of putting people under that the people that go fast, they just get knocked right out. So it's more
okay.
not for healing, it's for fun, just to show you how fast people get zonked out under hypnosis.
Interesting. All right, I'll be wary of that. We'll see.
Okay.
All the same. And then, yeah, I am going to try and make your event if I can on the 18th and
Okay.
19th, I believe. But yeah, my last question really for you, Jenali, is, as I'm kind of more on this channel segued into meditation practice, I just simply want to ask anybody I interview and what meditation means to you, I guess, but also like what's the most meditative space, in a day in, day out atmosphere where you're most
Yeah.
mindful, so forth. What does that mean to you, meditation?
So, meditation to me is a way for me to understand what thoughts are ruling my mind, what's kind of controlling my mind at the moment. That allows me to know what I need to clear out, what I need to touch back on. Um, that's the best way I could put it. What's ruling my mind in the moment? Um, the best time for me to meditate, I have to be a physical meditation person. So I like to do active meditation. I do a lot of that by driving. I actually do a lot of that by shuffling my tarot cards because as I'm shuffling the cards and my hands are are busy, I'm able to receive from the other side. I can do it just by putting crystals up, and I like to ask questions before and just clear my mind and put my crystals up like as I'm going. So I do best with an active meditation.
Nice. Okay. So active meaning like as long as you're in motion and doing anything.
Yes. So as long as my conscious mind is busy, my subconscious mind can receive. So it does happen to me a lot when I'm driving. I get the best downloads and the best ideas. So the fact that I actually have a voice recorder with me at all times when I'm driving, and I do travel a lot for a living. So active. And I like, I mean, you could do active meditations anywhere. I'm washing my body in the shower. And as I'm washing my body and I'm keeping myself active, I'm getting those downloads. Um, breath work actually helps me quite a bit. And I do also do cold plunging that can help.
Yeah. Yeah.
So any type of active meditation, because if not, if I'm just sitting here, my mind is wandering. So it is a way for me to understand what thoughts are controlling me during the day, what thoughts are overtaking, what negative thoughts I need to, get rid of, what stress is really happening to me, and where do I want to go from there? How else can I bounce myself up? So,
Yeah, I think that's beautiful. Do you ever meditate with your crystals or have any specific crystal that you've used at any point in time?
well, so right now I'm low on crystals, but here in the shop, I usually have over 500 towers and 200 tumbles and all these things. So if I'm in the shop, I just come over, if I'm in my office, I just come right up here to the shop and grab whatever I want for the day. So
Right.
yes, I have favorites. Smoky quartz is definitely a favorite of mine. Um, so is an amethyst and larimar and all sorts of stuff. So yes, I do use them. Um, depending on what it is I'm looking for. I sleep with fulgurites right now. If you've ever heard of a fulgurite.
No, nope. It's
But
foreign to me, but you can educate me for sure.
okay, I would love to whenever you're ready. It's one of my favorites. Very
Awesome.
potent.
Excellent. Well, again, I just want to thank you so much, Jenny, for offering all of you. I guess
Thank
it's not
you.
all of you, but a good portion of you, right? Because there's
Okay.
always so much more depth, and when time comes, I hope that you'll be willing to maybe come on again and do a follow up as well down the road.
Okay.
Because I just think you have so much more to offer, and I'm looking forward to reconnecting here soon. But
Yes. Me too. Thank you so much for having me. I've had a lot of fun just talking.
absolutely. Well, we have I love long form conversations in all ways, but I just wanted to utilize this space. So for anybody listening, you can find Jenna Lee on her TikTok. Follow the description below. buy crystals, link up to her. I'm still trying to work on her getting her own website so she can do some things over online and like
Right.
attract a bigger audience, given the nature of where she's at, you know, a limited exposure perhaps. But all in all, I just think that it's beautiful knowledge for everybody to kind of take home with them, understanding there's a lot of skepticism that leads someone down a path to really like feeling complete in doing the spiritual healing work that someone like Jenali does. And so I hope that you can take away something from this interview and this conversation today. And I thank you for joining us. So
Thank you so much.
Godspeed, blessings, and peace be with you all. Thank you for sticking around.